Welcome to tonight's Taylor Medical webinar. Thank you for joining us. Tonight's guest is Danny Laneri, who you are looking at. Thank you for attending. If you're not familiar with Taylor Medical is a group purchasing organization that provides you with tremendous discounts in purchasing really everything that you could possibly need to run your office. Tonight's webinar is being recorded, as are all of our webinars, and they are available at www.taylormedical.com. No spaces or dashes or anything. I'll repeat that, www.taylormedical.com. Once you go there, in the upper right-hand corner, you will see the word webinars. And if you click that link, you can see what has now become a vast library of webinars available to you. Oftentimes when people ask, should I be purchasing through Taylor? One of the ways to help you make that decision would be a cost analysis, which Taylor Medical staff does for you. If you contact them, they can help you realize just how much savings are available when purchasing through Taylor. I am Dr. Jeff Lehrman, podiatrist and shareholder in Taylor Medical, and very pleased and excited to welcome Danny Laneri. Danny, thank you for joining us. Danny is the Director of Business Development at Swell. Swell is a business which helps us to grow our businesses online. Danny focuses on growth initiatives for Swell, ranging from strategic partnerships to integrations and more. He brings a decade of excellence in patient communication software as a service. When he's not working, you'll find Danny on a golf course, in the Utah mountains, skiing, and spending time with his wife and family. Danny has a 4-year-old boy, a 2-year-old boy, and just had a newborn third boy. So Danny, we really appreciate you providing this information. And before I turn it over to you, let me please invite those attending to ask questions. Danny has purposely in his presentation left time for questions. We want your questions, so please don't be bashful with your questions. It's probably the best part of these online engagements. And without further ado, Danny, I turn it over to you.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. Happy to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation, and we will get started. I am excited to talk about this topic tonight. This is definitely something that, given the past year, has certainly grown in importance in terms of the regard that we need to take for our online reputations for our businesses. And I'm going to walk through, as it's titled here, Growing Your Business Online and Why It's Important. I'd like to start with a little bit of a higher level thought concept, something that I think that we can all relate to. Now, we certainly as consumers today, we value convenience. In fact, it has been said surrounding one of the most successful companies that the world has ever seen, that convenience is the commodity that matters most to our generation. Now, when you think, what is one of the most successful companies that the world has ever seen? This may come as no surprise. And case in point, it's Amazon. Now, it's amazing to think that we used to get into our cars, drive across town, walk up and down grocery store aisles, aimlessly searching for things that we need. But now with the click of a button in our sweatpants at home with a cell phone in the palm of our hand, we can order things like Swedish fish, a Yoda costume for our dog, mangoes, and in my case, baby diapers in the click of a button, and they can arrive at my doorstep within 24 to 48 hours with all of my payment information and even conveniently suggestions about things that I may have been browsing previously suggested to me at the end of my purchase for added convenience. Now, a lot of this centers around the fact that there are now over 6 billion smartphones in circulation. In fact, over 50% of the world's population are now mobile internet users. We have these iPhones that have taken all of our personal information, all of the things that we need at our fingertips, and have conveniently integrated them into one personalized device that most of us rely on a daily basis. And this is what our customers and our business patrons have come to expect, is a convenience and the ability to interact with us mobily. I'd like to just throw up a little another thought concept here as far as technology and changing our expectations. Now, when we think about 20 years ago, when we were carrying around pagers and relied on landline phones or the bag phone in our cars, or wrote out manual checks or carried that dirty thing that we call cash and used it to transact in department stores and grocery stores alike, technology has absolutely changed the way that we like to transact, find businesses, interact with businesses, receive information from businesses, and the like. Now, the way that I'll illustrate this is, think about the way that Amazon has changed your purchasing experiences. Think about the way that Netflix has changed the way that you consume TV and movies. Spotify. It's a more is more model where with the click of a button, depending on set and setting, you can have endless volumes of music at your fingertips available to you depending on what you like. Uber has completely disrupted the yellow cab. Instead of taking a ride in New York City where after a 10-minute or 15-minute stretch, that cab driver presses a magic button at the front of your cab where your fare instantly doubles, for which reason you have no idea. Now you have your personal information. You can be picked up on any major corner in the world, and you've got information about the driver, his star ratings, and essentially it is the most convenient experience in terms of public transportation. DoorDash allows us to sit in home and order from thousands of restaurants right to our doorsteps. And while Tinder may or may not apply to those of us on this webinar, it has certainly expedited the process and made it much more convenient to find a soulmate in today's world. Now, taking this back down to our practices, how has this affected patient expectations? What do patients expect in 2021? How has this technology affected the way that they expect to find us, the way that they'd like to schedule with us, receive pre-post-op instructions, pay us, schedule appointments, receive insurance billing, all of the like? All of this is encompassed in what we refer to as the patient experience. And while we think we're experts in our field and it's only important that we have a degree on the wall and that we give them the information that they need from a theoretical and a practical standpoint, that's not the case. Because right now, the experience is heavily weighted in our practices, and it is just as important as the service you provide. In fact, patients are saying that the experience that you provide is equally as important as the product or service that you provide. And many of those patients that are coming in our front door and leaving out the back, and they're not accepting the treatment that was suggested or following through or becoming a lifelong patient or referring other patients, they're leaving because of a bad patient experience. And there are so many things that are encapsulated in that patient experience. Today, I'm going to touch on a few of those, but first and foremost, it is that the tip of the spear in today's world is an online search, and the online reviews actually have a whole lot of credibility in terms of whether or not your practice or your services are selected by these patients. Now, here's a quick stat. 93% of customers read online reviews before making a purchase or a buying decision. Now, even if you wanted to cut that number in half right away and say, Danny, 93%, that can't be right, even half is astronomical in the sense that patients are actually reading reviews. They're doing their homework online. In fact, online reviews and these online searches that these patients can perform on our practices and businesses are actually replacing friends and family recommendations in many cases, because even after a friend or a family member makes a recommendation, they'll still take their mobile phone and do a search of your practice, get to know you a little bit, read patient reviews, and these reviews are now heavily weighted in the selection process for a patient selecting a provider and a practice. Now, once again, some more stats. 97% of consumers use online media when researching services in their local area. And here's something that I find very interesting. 31%, or a large majority of individuals, are actually influenced by positive reviews, excellent reviews, and they are, due to the data, they're showing that they're willing to spend more money with a business that has social proof online. And so as we talk about some of the ways that your practice can stand out online, the different strategies that you can deploy in terms of how to be found online, how to be selected over local competition, there are a couple different options. And whether you'd like to go with a pay-per-click ad, a paid ad, or search engine optimization, that is something that is absolutely worth consideration. And we find that a lot of practices and businesses have success with you. Some of the pros, it gives you a chance to be seen by a very wide audience. You can actually target audiences, run promos, seasonal promotions, and specials through these pay-per-click ads or paid ads. But the con is that every time someone who may or may not be a fit for your business clicks on that ad, you're spending money, but you may not end up with a landed customer. Now, as you can see over on the right-hand side, we've listed organic reviews. Now, organic reviews on Google is king right now. Who would have thought 10 years ago that Google would be telling your patients how good or not with an initial search your practices are based on feedback from previous patients and interactions? Now, it may or may not be known by many people, but Google reviews actually affect your local search rankings. So because these reviews affect your search rankings, it's very, very important to ensure that you are getting reviews to your Google My Business page from past patients. And obviously, the more positive and the more reviews in terms of volume, the better, because Google is constantly tracking the number of reviews your practice or your business location has, the star rating. Practices that are 4.5 stars and below are suffering in that patients are looking at that and saying, oh, if all of these individuals weren't happy and rated them at a 3-star, well, that's very simple for me to make my initial selection process and pass over them for this 4.5 or 5-star practice. This is now considered as a trusted source, and reviews left on your Google My Business page, they're yours to keep, and they appear front and center when patients in your local area search for a podiatrist near me or any specific treatment or procedural code that you may have listed as a keyword or a tag. We're going to walk into this in more depth, but just looking at the contrast between paid ads or organic reviews, paid ads are a phenomenal a phenomenal option for practices. However, in terms of return on investment, it may or may not be the best spend for your practice. Whereas gaining organic reviews through an automated system that is very good at getting patients to respond and linking them directly to your Google page, your Facebook page, health grades, any other sites that may or may not be relevant for your practice, it's actually a very low spend and a high return on investment given how heavily patients utilize online reviews in their selection process. And so just diving a little bit deeper in terms of Google reviews and the fact that Google reviews do affect your local search rankings, I wanted to break this down and talk about how Google determines the local rankings. There are a couple words here that may or may not be more relevant to our conversation today: relevance, distance, prominence, quality, and quantity. And we're going to dive a little bit deeper into each one of these. Now, relevance, this is how well your local profile is matching what the patient is searching for. One key thing to point out here is that there may or may not be practices that are listening here today that have claimed their Google My Business page in a quality way, in that they've updated all of their information, that it matches their hours of operation, their location or locations, and the services that they provide. Google may or not be able to send you patients that are searching online just through relevance, but if you have not claimed your Google My Business page and properly updated information, then patients that could have landed in your practice and speaking to you about the services and procedures that you offer may end up somewhere else just merely by relevance. So this is one key factor to make sure as you do an audit of your online presence that you're making sure that everything is up to date. We'll talk more about that later. Distance, this is no surprise. This is just a geotag or an IP address from the patient's device, be that a computer or a mobile phone, and where you map it in terms of your geotag, it will place proximity. And if that patient or patients are searching closely to your practice, you will end up more likely to show up in that Google Map Pack search ranking. Now, prominence, this comes back to that search engine optimization. This is how well you have tagged in keywords. If your website is ranking high, if your social sites are ranking high, if you have any blogs or educational material or any organizations that you're involved with, that you're tagged in there, and that you're accounting for all of the algorithmic aspect of the search engine optimization, prominence will rank practices that have a great search engine optimization presence higher than practices that are not appearing online and their website is not ranking highly. They don't have traffic to their website, to their social and other sites. The two things that I would like to focus on primarily are quality and quantity. Now, quality, once again, this is fairly intuitive here. Practices with a higher star rating have a higher likelihood that patients will click on that Google My Business page and hopefully end up landing on your website to where they can learn more about you as a provider, your team, the services and procedures that you offer, and hopefully inquire through telephone, text message, web chat, you name it, to schedule an appointment and to have that initial appointment with you. But here is something that is absolutely important. This is what we would say ranks the highest in terms of importance for a practice seeking to rank highly for a low spend but a high return on investment. Number one, as I said before, the amount of reviews. If you were to search for a sushi restaurant in San Francisco, you're less likely to select a restaurant that has 3 5-star reviews as opposed to a restaurant that has 200 4.5-star reviews. Now, these second two are actually much more important than the amount of reviews. This is the freshness and the recency that your business or your practice is receiving reviews. If you have 500 reviews on Google, that's phenomenal. But if your last review from a patient was 2 years ago, you will be outranked by a practice that has 50 reviews where their most fresh or recent review was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago or even a day ago. Frequency is absolutely key. As Google is a data company, they want fresh and recent data to promote the businesses that show a lifeblood and to show a recency in terms of the services that they provide and feedback that's coming from actual patients that had an experience in the practice. And so if, once again, from an audit standpoint, I would encourage those of you here to go and search yourself, find your Google My Business listing, make sure it's claimed properly, but then look into how fresh or how recently you've received your last review from a patient or a business patron. So as we talk about this, I know I've alluded to some of these tips and tricks and best practices, but just to recap here, number one, on your Google My Business page, ensure that you have claimed that properly, that it has a correct physical address, your current phone number, the category or categories that you operate in within your practice, and then the attributes would be things like what services, what should patients who are searching specific keywords, what would you like to match? Or what is your ideal avatar patient, if you will, meaning they're searching certain procedural codes or certain keywords. And if you can list that properly by claiming your Google My Business page, you're more likely to match up with those real prospects, and there's a higher likelihood that they'll end up in your practice. Now, another thing, and this comes at no surprise, that photos and videos are absolutely starting to dominate. Patients want to see faces. They want to see locations, your operatories, have a real visual aspect of what it may be like to deal with you, get a feel for you, and the individuals on your team, show them what they can expect, see some friendly faces, and see the rooms and the business location that they can come in and receive their treatment. Now, in terms of hours of accuracy, I know that given our past year with COVID and closures and different things, that it's actually been quite a struggle for practices to keep things as accurate as possible. But this will absolutely ensure that an individual could search podiatry near me or a podiatrist near me, end up on your Google My Business listing, see that it reflects a time frame that they can schedule an appointment, land on your website, or even call or chat in directly from the Google My Business page. Verifying your location, this comes back to the search engine optimization. If you will verify your location and your geotag, then the relevance and the distance in terms of patients that are searching in your local area and even broader results are more likely to land on your Google My Business listing. You're more likely to show up in that initial search on Google. And so it's very important to verify your location. Now, as we dive a little bit deeper, I've talked about these online reviews, how heavily patients are utilizing these in the selection process, and that they do affect your SEO, your local search rankings, and broader search rankings. So it's absolutely important to have an online review strategy. Many practices are verbally asking patients as they walk out the door, would you mind and go and search us on Google and leave us a review? And while they have seen some success and occasionally patients that are extremely happy will take the time and the additional 4 or 5 steps to search the practice, log into Google, go and make sure that they leave that review and that it ends up on your Google My Business page, we at Swell absolutely encourage to leverage software and automation tools that are very low lift for the practice, meaning the practice can simply integrate that with their practice management software, their CRM, their EMR, you name it, whatever you're using to keep your patient data in and to keep your scheduling, all of the above, to integrate a software like Swell into your scheduler so that automated review requests can go out after the appointments are kept, and that patients can simply click that link at the bottom. It's a one-click step given our privileged relationship with Google and the fact that we have already been authenticated. We hold a private API with Google so that patients can simply click that link. It will verify if they're logged into any Gmail account, be that through a work email, through Facebook, whether it's a Gmail account or part of the G Suite. A lot of emails that are part of the G Suite do not have @gmail.com. They may have unique addresses that actually are part of the Gmail family. The system will automatically pick that up. It will not require the patient to log in. They can click that link and land right there on your Google My Business page. Excuse me, leave a 5-star review, 4-star, you name it, give some feedback, tell individuals online how excellent they thought you were, how professional the practice was, you kept time, the billing was accurate with the expectations that they had, and that can help you grow online. Meanwhile, it's not a huge lift from the practice standpoint, but utilizing a review tool is of the utmost importance because in today's day and age, with patients and all of the busyness and the number of electronic bombardments and things that they have, the likelihood that they will leave your practice and go and take the time and walk through 4 or 5 steps to leave you a review is not as likely as a patient who receives a message on their mobile phone 6 to 8 p.m. the day of the appointment, when they're at home resting on the couch, potentially watching TV, have just enjoyed a meal. They can click that link and within 20 to 30 seconds and a 1-step process can leave a review for your practice and increase the likelihood that other people will find you online and will select your practice over other practices. Now, just want to talk about the missing link in the sales process. I know that from a business standpoint, your practices are absolutely spending money to market, to target certain ads. We talked about pay-per-click, search engine optimization, very eloquent, robust websites, different tools. But one step, if you're not focused on that initial search that patients are performing, practices near me, podiatrists near me, specific procedures that they're looking for. These reviews and the Google My Business page is of the utmost importance in the sales process, because if you're spending all that money on marketing spend and then they can't go and get a true reflection of what other individuals or patients felt and said about you online, oftentimes they'll pass you up for other practices that have a robust or a solid online reputation. And that would then link to the third step, which is the likelihood that they will land on your website or that they will inquire and book an appointment with the practice. So when we talk about online reviews, that's absolutely the tip of the spear. That is the initial smell check that patients are searching online and selecting practices based on the online reviews. But that's not the only important step in this process. It's then, after they've selected you over local competition because of online reviews and social proof, and they got a feel from your photos and reviews and things that they would like to inquire more and potentially schedule an appointment, then what? How can they reach you? Are they forced to call in and spend 10 minutes on the phone figuring out if you take their insurance, if you take insurance at all, how much the procedure might cost, how much a consultation might cost, all of the above? We heavily encourage practices in today's world to open up additional channels for patients to reach them. And by this, I mean text message, web chat, social media, online appointment requesting, and web form submissions directly from your website. If a patient can find you online conveniently, get a feel for your practice, and then conveniently communicate or engage with your practice through a simple text message or through a web chat with a question like, do you accept insurance? Or how much for this specific procedure? Or do you have availability this week for a consultation? And giving that message in 30 seconds and connecting with your practice in a two-way text conversation, or potentially even viewing your schedule, or generally being able to say, hey, I would like to request an appointment Tuesdays and Thursdays from the windows of 8 to 10 p.m. and in between 8 and 9 is most preferable. You're going to see a huge influx as there's a growing number of online searchers for medical practices. If they can connect with you conveniently, it will really fill the top of the funnel and give you more opportunities to convert patient prospects into lifelong patients or into receiving the treatment that they need. There are fewer and fewer calls today. In fact, on the iPhone, a recent statistic is that the phone application on the iPhone is actually the 5th most utilized application on the phone. Voicemails are going unlistened to, and more importantly, fewer and fewer voicemails are being left. And so if this is the case, opening up these additional channels, like I mentioned, social media, two-way text messages, web chat inquiries, web form submissions, online appointment requests, and making sure that those things conveniently funnel into one area so that your practice can take all of your Facebook messages, your text messages, your web chat and online appointment requests and conveniently look at them from one inbox, so they're not having to log into Facebook, check an office cell phone, log into a software for your online appointment request, for a web chat. But one thing at Swell, we heavily encourage practices to look into softwares, one like ours, that centralizes all of these communications from different avenues and different channels into one convenient inbox for the practice to respond to patients. And you're able to allow patients to meet you where they are. If they'd like to send you a message through Facebook Messenger, your practice should be able to receive that message, shoot that communication back, and that goes directly to the Facebook Messenger without you having to log in. Text messaging from your office phone number is now something that is common, but it's very important that those text messages are coming in a way that you're seeing them and that you're responding to them quickly enough, because response time does matter. If a patient wants to reach you through web chat, through text message, through social media, response time It really does matter. And if you can reduce your response times, you will decrease the likelihood that that patient will continue their online search and go and try to engage with another practice that may have a quicker response or a more convenient way for the patient to reach them. Now, when we look at these different avenues and former response times, if you're forced to log in and run them all separately, some of them can be incredibly slow. Social media, if a practice doesn't have a handle on their messaging inbox for Facebook, Instagram, now even TikTok has some relevance. Email can also have a slow response. The reality is that running with a web chat or a text messaging system has the quickest and most convenient response for both the patient and the practice. But even with a system like Swell, those 10-hour and 12-hour response times through social media and email can be reduced greatly by sending all of those messages into one inbox where the team members, whether it's in one location or across several locations, can see those messages in real time and respond to that patient or individual that's inquiring. Now, just talking a little bit more about web chat. Web chat, in fact, in podiatry, there was a statistic that's shown that under 40% of practices have a web chat or a way for their patients to submit a request or a communication through their website. This would mean that there's a large opportunity for practices to leverage a technology like a web chat that many, many other successful companies are using, but allowing patients to submit a very quick and convenient question before they're willing to call in or submit any personal information. This could be a great way to capture online searchers that are in need of the procedures and services you provide, but without a tool like web chat or, once again, even an online scheduling option, patients are actually passing up on practices that don't have these avenues to communicate with and searching for the most convenient and personalized avenues of communication to engage with practices. So here's an interesting little stat. 31% of online searchers or business patrons are likely to use a provider that uses online booking or an online appointment request. So with online scheduling, allowing them to come to your site, select a general day and time, submit any additional notes, and that message, when it's submitted, actually connects that patient in a two-way text conversation with the practice. So that hypothetically, if I'm a patient searching for a practice, I could suggest that I'd like a Monday or a Wednesday appointment at 2:30 p.m. The practice could immediately receive my message and correspond, and I receive a message on my cell phone saying, "Hey, Danny, we got your inquiry. Unfortunately, on Monday and Wednesday, we only have 3 to 4:30 available. Would those times work for you?" I can then text back and say, "That's fantastic. That works as well. Looking forward to it. What do you need me to do next?" You can either send an online form right there through text message, or you can direct me to your website or any other patient portals where I can go and fill out my information and complete the process prior to my showing up for the appointment on that Monday window. Now, one thing in terms of, we've talked about the patient acquisition or the likelihood that we can be found online and that we can connect conveniently with patients, but we want to talk about the end experience and that patient experience and enhancing it to ensure the likelihood that patients aren't just coming in for a consult, rejecting our treatment suggestions and leaving out the back, but asking feedback and applying it in our practices can absolutely increase patient satisfaction, but it can also help you grow from a business standpoint. Whether this is fine-tuning the verbiage that you're using with your patients, the processes that you have in practice, or if patients share feedback about things that they were happy or unhappy with, you can double down on the things that they're happy with, and you can improve the things that many patients are saying that they're unhappy with. But the very most important thing is to ask for feedback. And we know that practices likely don't have the time to send off one at a time patient satisfaction surveys. So once again, leveraging automation, integrating something with your scheduler or your practice management or your EMR software that will, after an appointment is kept, it will automatically trigger either a Net Promoter Score survey, like 1 to 10. How did you feel about your overall experience? Are you likely to recommend us to a family or friend? What did you feel about the cleanliness or the customer service, or any of these questions? But then once again, that feedback would come in the form of soliciting or requesting an online review from that patient. And leveraging automation is very important here, because if we don't ask, the statistics are showing that patients will leave with attitudes of indifference, but they may or may not say something. In fact, here's a stat, and once again, if you'd like to cut this data in half, this is a real survey here with data, and we've got some sites and some metrics that we can share additionally if you'd like to inquire further. But patients are saying that they're leaving because of a bad experience and they won't say anything. But 67% of this churn, or a large majority of this churn, is possible if we will simply ask the patients about the experience that they had in the practice. If we have a convenient way for patients to receive a message on their phone or email or their personal computer, and within 30 seconds can leave us that feedback, it's automatically integrated and comes back to the practice, patients are more likely to give us that feedback rather than making them log into different sites or fill out extremely long questionnaires. But really asking for feedback and applying it will increase the likelihood that, rather than just serving patients, once again, patients typically just come in the front door and leave out the back, and instead creating practice champions. These are individuals who will give you feedback. They'll give you referrals. They'll boast about their experience in your practice online. And the majority of these champions are willing to spend the time to give you the feedback. They value what you offer and the services you provide, and the fact that you're asking them for their feedback and asking them about potential improvements or things that they were satisfied with. Really, the distinguishing factor here is that champions will help you grow your business. They will increase your online reviews, the referral sources, and they themselves will continue to come back because you are now a trusted provider, given their patient experience and how convenient and easy it is to communicate with your practice. So just as a quick illustration here, when we talk about 3 very important things, it's getting found online, connecting conveniently, but then growing through the patient experience. So here in this reputation wheel, it's getting found through online reviews. A great experience in that initial connect. They can text message you, request online appointments, reach you through social media, web chat. You then solicit feedback, and whether that's for online reviews or learning ways to improve, you now have practice champions. And the net result of all of these efforts is new patients. And not only new patients, but one inclusion that should potentially be in here is lifelong patients. Patients that whenever they have a need within the services or the realms of which you provide or you're an expert, they will think of you as that trusted source. And so as we talk about this, and Taylor and the partnership in the buying group, we have a wonderful offering in terms of discounts on our services. We work closely with many of you who are engaging with Taylor from a buying group standpoint, but the Swell platform is very robust. Its main focus is to help you get found online, help you connect conveniently through utilizing our tools of convenience and automation, and then leveraging our requests for payments, feedback, additional education through newsletters or bulk text and email sequences. All of the above, it's included and encompassed within our platform. And we would love to spend 10 to 15 minutes with you on a Zoom call with some of our sales team to show you what we offer, the services that we provide, and other practices like yours that have seen a great amount of success for the relatively low spend that our monthly service fee is, and the high return on investment that these focuses can provide. I'm going to leave my information here, And I'm more than happy to discuss with any of you. I know, Jeff, we have a QA here that I'll pause for, but just by way of information, please feel free to reach out to me. You can email me, text message me, that's my cell phone there, or you can do a little digging on our website and check into some of the services we provide, and do your own homework by searching the reviews about Swell on other business sites and figure out what our over 4,000 practices have said about engaging with us from a business relationship standpoint. That's all I have. So thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Danny, thank you. That was phenomenal. Well done. Excellent presentation. On behalf of my colleagues that are watching, really thank you. That was great. I had to share, I had a recent run of having to take children to dentists and orthodontists and eye doctor, and man, is it frustrating to think, why don't the conveniences that we have in our phone for every other aspect of our life, like buying a movie ticket or making a reservation at a restaurant, exist when you go to the doctor? And then couldn't help but think, am I and my colleagues providing that for podiatry patients? And you just answered the question, right? The making online scheduling, online communication, you just gave us a way to satisfy that exact thing that had been on my mind. So thank you. There are a bunch of questions here. Thanks to those that have put questions in. For those that have not yet and still want to, there is time. You can see we have 18 minutes left here. If you look at the toolbar here for the webinar jam, you'll see the word chat with the two little speech bubbles there, and please feel free to enter questions there. There are a bunch, but I think we'll have time for more if anybody wants to put more in. The first question is, I've already paid for a website. You may have already kind of answered this, but I already have a website. Why should I also be worrying about SEO, search engine optimization?
Sure. Well, the website is a great thing to have, but once again, in terms of looking at how Google ranks local search rankings, the SEO is actually how highly your site ranks based on specific keywords, traffic. There are many things. You can have a beautiful tens of thousands of dollars expensive website sitting there dormant, but if you don't boost that and have it tapped in from an SEO standpoint, then you may as well have spent $500 and had the same effect, because the SEO is what will increase the likelihood that when someone searches podiatrist near me, that your website will show up front and center in that map pack or the highest rankings on Google. Many patients aren't clicking through page 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and practices that don't leverage SEO and the algorithmic side of the SEO rankings. I can't say that I understand it perfectly, but there are SEO experts that do. That will increase the likelihood that your website will show up on that first page of Google.
Super. You mentioned the ability to text message with patients from the office. And this question is your text messaging using your platform HIPAA compliant? Absolutely.
We actually, we have inside of our customer portfolio, we have everything from dental practices, podiatrists, orthopedic surgeons, hospital groups that have up to 450 providers. And so in that instance, our platform is built in and around healthcare primarily. And we have to sign a business associate agreement with the practice and take on the legal responsibilities to make sure that everything is secure and HIPAA compliant.
Thank you. That's excellent. There's a couple questions in here about asking for that review. So somebody writes, I've tried before and felt a little funny, which you shouldn't. That's me saying that. What do you have any tips as far as how and when to best ask the patient to leave a review?
I certainly do. This is something that's very important. Let's go back to and picture all of ourselves as a patient. When we have just completed an appointment and we receive a message that looks like it's from a 5-digit short code spam number, it's not highly recognizable, and it says, thanks for your appointment, click the link, and we think, oh, no way. But take that same scenario, and with Swell, we ensure that there's an office logo or a picture of the provider that they saw, that it's well branded, that the verbiage feels personalized, just like we would text our friends and family member, hey, Danny, thanks so much for trusting us with your healthcare. We really enjoyed seeing you today. Would you please click the link, and your feedback means the world to us. Click that link, it routes you directly in one step to Google. And once again, the fewer steps that are required in this process, the more likelihood people will follow through. In fact, we've seen a drop off of about 12 to 15% for every additional step that practices require. And then to your third point, Jeff, is the timing. We have thousands and thousands and thousands of statistics on the highest likelihood in terms of time frame for patients to engage through a mobile device, and that happens to be 6 to 8:30 p.m. local time. We've sent out millions of requests through our system now, but the reality is, with our modern day, we are just bombarded. If someone tries to leave your practice at 3:30 in the afternoon and you're pestering them to click the link and do this or do that, they're headed back to take the kids to soccer practice, back to work, to go cook a meal, finish their work day, you name it. But if you catch them during their Netflix time or an evening time where they're on the couch with their mobile device and they're scrolling through social or performing online searches or what have you, that is the best time to capture and engage an online review.
Fantastic. So another question, you mentioned web form submission. Something else I was frustrated with at the orthodontist handed me the stack of papers, and I thought, why didn't I do this on the computer yesterday? Taking more time, COVID, we're breathing on clipboards and touching pens, and just seemed ridiculous to me to be writing on a piece of paper in 2021. So web form submission is awesome. The question is, are your web form submissions using your platform HIPAA compliant? So another privacy question.
So in terms of web form submission, what we consider ourselves is actually the vehicle to place that in the patient's hands at the right time. So we work closely with and integrate with the majority of the EMRs and practice management softwares that you all are using. But our system is actually the vehicle to say, hey, Danny, we do have 2:30 on Monday available. If you'll just click this link here and submit this patient form, then that will come back to us on our end, and all you need to do is show up for your appointment. So in terms of the web form, if someone doesn't have a web form that they're already using, we do have partnerships that are HIPAA compliant and only work in healthcare. But we're actually the vehicle that sends out their specific intake forms, HIPAA forms, medical history, you name it. We're the vehicle that places that in the patient's hands and ensures that they fill that out prior to coming in to the appointment, and that you're logged and aware of it on your end in your system.
Super. There's a bunch more here, but they're good ones. This is good, useful information. So next question, I've always been told that word of mouth is the best type of recommendation there is. I wonder how many years that might go back. Today, is there reason to believe that online reviews are trusted like more traditional word of mouth recommendations?
Yes, I would encourage that individual to just go and perform a simple search in terms of the relevancy of online reviews. I actually spoke to this in my presentation, but I said, in terms of online reviews, replacing a friends and family request is that someone may say, hey, go to so-and-so, or we've been dealing with them, have absolutely loved it. The tendency right now is to still go and perform a search and to read online reviews and see what other individuals are saying about the practice. Because as much as they trust their friend or family member, the greater social proof comes in the form of 10s, 20s, 30s, hundreds, and they can get a really good feel for the practice by a quick online search. And that's what we're seeing is happening right now.
Thank you. Next question, does Swell offer online faxing?
So we are not a phone system, but at the same time, we are integrated and have partnered with VoIP phone systems that do have eFax capabilities. So you can essentially, if you're inside of the Swell platform, your phone system is synced in. You can click to dial that patient or can text right there from your office phone number, but we do not provide the e-fax.
Next, I'm accustomed to my patients preferring phone calls, but I've been in practice for many years. Have patient communication preferences changed? I think what they're getting at here is, how do people want to be communicated with? I know how I want to be communicated with. I don't want to answer the phone either, Danny, like you said.
Yeah. I'll just say this, and I'm very confident at this point to say that in terms of patient and business statistics, that text message is absolutely the preferred means of communication in 2021.
Totally. Yeah. And I'll add, I experienced this in my own practice with older people that you might be questioning, their ability to engage in this. Who's normally bringing them to their appointments? It's their adult children, right? Who are in their 40s or 50s who want text messages, right?
Yep.
And oftentimes they're the ones managing this. Okay. I read this one ahead of time, and I have to share my own thought on this. If you're running a small business while being a doctor, or doctor or not, it's so important to put a value on your staff and the return on the investment of your staff. And see so many colleagues that are reluctant to grow their staff or reluctant to add a service because it would mean having to hire somebody else. But you think you're going to make that money back by giving somebody more hours or hiring another staff member. So that's my own slant on this. So with that being said, the person wrote in, you mentioned, Danny, the importance of responding within 2 minutes. This sounds to me like it might add burden to my staff. Do you have any thoughts on this?
I do. I would say 10 years ago, when I first jumped into patient communication, it was still somewhat relevant in that they're saying, oh, my patients prefer a phone call and it's cumbersome and this and that. But as we've looked at it throughout the years, it's a shift in paradigm of what your team members are actually doing. Right now, many teams are bogged down on 10 to 15 minute phone calls that are completely useless and that could have been handled in 2 or 3 text message correspondence. In fact, when I talk about opening up additional bandwidth from a team member standpoint, if you reduce your phone time, you can send out 3, 4, 5 messages through your messaging inbox at a time, you've actually increased the number of patients that they can serve. And when we talk back to patient satisfaction, I don't want to spend that 8 to 10 minute phone call. I know that I'm not unique, but if they can fire off text messages with a keystroke from the front desk computer, then they've actually become more efficient and less frustrated.
I couldn't agree more. It goes to the doctor too, right? I see a message on my desk with a phone number to call the patient back. That I get a pit in my stomach, not because I don't want to talk to him, because I know what's going to happen. I'm going to get a voicemail. And then there's privacy concerns with what I can say and can't say. And then it leads to a back and forth. And man, the ability to text is so much better.
I'm going to throw in one more comment there as well that I haven't spoken to yet, but all of these capabilities are available through our mobile app as well. So if you're on the beach in Hawaii, or you're out of town, or you're doing your weekend or after office follow-ups, you name it, you've got a mobile app. You're not sharing your personal number. It's coming directly from your office phone number. And just like you would text on your phone, you can communicate with those patients through your inbox from your mobile app. And all of your team members can download those apps as well without sharing private information. So you're now communicating in the convenience of your home, palm of your hand, rather than that annoyance of needing to be coming from your office phone number, staying after hours, or open weekends. It's just a whole new world of possibilities with the mobile app and the text capabilities.
It's great. I think this has really already been answered, but maybe you can speak to it a little more directly. I'm interested in growing my business. I think they're using your words that was in the title of this webinar. I'm interested in growing my business. Do you think providing this convenience to my patients will help me accomplish that? I think you've answered that, but maybe you could speak to it a little more directly.
Yeah, I'll say this. Right now, there's an ever-growing number of online searches taking place for podiatrists, medical practices, you name it. If that particular practice that just asked this question is not perfectly positioned to be front and center in every single one of those searches in their local area, if their patients are forced to call them instead of being able to text message them, Facebook message them, online appointment request, or a web chat, they're inevitably losing out on patient prospect opportunities, and plugging in Swell or a system like Swell is exactly how you fill the top of the funnel with more at-bats or more patient prospects that can then be converted into lifelong patients, or even if it's a one-time treat, that is business growth as we know it. And this is absolutely a very low-cost, high-return aspect to patient acquisition and continued patient service.
Super. We have time for one more. Apologies if we didn't get to your question. We didn't get to everyone. You have Danny's contact info there. He'd love to hear from you. You can text, like he said, that number, or email him your question. So our final question that we have time for, I have a small town, rural population with lots of older folks. Remember what I said, who's bringing those people to the doctor? It's their adult children my age who don't want a phone call. But the question is, can I expect this population type to engage via text?
I'll say right now that text message no longer, for example, my 95-year-old grandmother told me that I don't Facebook enough. And she's in Florida, but in terms of small town, that was 10 years ago, as I spoke to, that may or may not have been more relevant depending on carriers, costs, you name it. But right now, text message, 50% plus of the world's population, we're one of the most advanced in the world, but 50% of the world's population are mobile internet users. Text messaging, online searches, social media, the works. Regardless of a small town or age demographic, text message will still reign supreme with at least 60 to 70%. And for that 30%, if they really, really will not communicate with you through a text message or some of your online capabilities, then fine, you can cater to them, but you're still going to be passing up on a large, large number of your patients and a convenience and satisfaction standpoint by overlooking a system that gives you these capabilities.
Right on. Well, Danny, again, thank you. We want to wrap up on time here, so I'll pull us to a close. Thank you for providing this information. Swell is a fantastic service that our Taylor Medical members can absolutely benefit from. You can learn more at swellcx.com. You can see Danny's phone number where he invited you to call or text, as well as Danny's email, which is available there. As a reminder, Taylor Medical is a group purchasing organization allowing for phenomenal discounts on just about every single thing you use in your office. You can learn more about Taylor Medical by visiting taylormedical.com. Taylor Medical also provides you with a free medical supply cost analysis to help you in your decision as to whether you should switch to Taylor or start using Taylor if you're not already. And finally, we hope you will join us for our next Taylor Tuesday webinar, which is 2 weeks from tonight for those that are with us live on August 16th with our guest speaker, Peter Wishney, who is a podiatrist and director of family foot and ankle specialists, talking about how to make your practice enjoyable in any environment, which sounds timely. Again, Danny, thank you so much. Thanks to those who joined us. Thanks who are watching on demand, and have a good evening.
Thanks a lot.